My life before Christ was, I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was in the Navy for 20 years. We traveled around the country. And I was always seeking something, but never knew what it was. I was fortunate back in elementary school. I had a teacher that took me to a Billy Graham film, and the Billy Graham film, it was one of the motorcycle films that he did in the 60s, and that was when prayer and everything was allowed in schools. And that's when I first come to know Christ. I wouldn't say I knew Christ, but I accepted Christ and went through the motions and everything. Then after that, I was in and out of church. My parents, my dad especially, wasn't one to. I had to work at his gas station. He owned gas stations while I was growing up, and while he wasn't against Christ because he grew up with his mother being a Christian here in Bradford, he was just not real into taking time away from work. Work was a big thing. I did get a work ethic at least. And as time went on, I would come in and out of the church. Ended up in a Nazarene church as a young person, and the pastor's son, he had a dune buggy, and we used to just, minister. He ministered through the dune buggy ministry that he had, and this was Florida, so that was the end thing. And I was in and out, more in than at that time. Never really knew Christ. Just kept, seeking something. Well, my parents decided to. My dad retired from the Navy, and we decided to move away from Jacksonville. Went to North Carolina, and in North Carolina was my an experience where they had the youth lead the worship service, and during that time, I really felt like I was on fire for Christ, and I preached one of the services, and the other youth did music, and we all had our own part in the services, and it was like the pastor said, well, you make a 3-point sermon and do this. So I sat down and did my 3-point sermon, and then after that I had gotten up and preached, and it was like the Holy Spirit spoke through me, because I don't remember everything. I remember some of it, but it was my first real experience with Christ, I felt. And my parents came up and accepted Christ, and several people in the church. The front end was pretty full. And then after that, I met a girl, and things kind of started going backwards. And my dad and I weren't getting along. He was like I say, he was an alcoholic, and I always blamed him for throughout the years. And after that, I ran away from home. I ended up joining a cult group called the Children of God, and while I ran away from home, I had my own job, had my own apartment, met some Christians down back in Jacksonville, where I ran to from North Carolina, and at that point I had rented from this Christian lady. Well, I just still hadn't really come to know Christ, even though I preached, and God used me, and God can use us in different ways even before we become a Christian, and he did at that time. Well, I ended up joining the Children of God, and they were a group that had literature like "Come On Ma, Burn Your Bra," and it was the 60s, 70s type cult group, and they were about ready to take us all to Miami, Florida, and then take us overseas to a foreign country. Well, unbeknownst to me, I had given up everything. I joined that group. They sold literature outside of the grocery store I worked at, And we went in, we cleaned out my apartment, and I gave them everything. And at that point, we were getting ready to leave, and all of a sudden the police came into the house, took me out, and took me to the police station. Never arrested me or anything. And on the next day, I was on a flight back to Bradford, where my parents had ended up moving, and it was really tough for me because I was still searching, and I felt a connection to that Children of God group, and here the lady who I rented from in Jacksonville notified my parents of what was going to happen, and a local group called the Freedom Foundation came in, got me out of the cult group, took me back to the flew me back. They told my parents, be ready, they're going to get me out, get me back, and they had somebody trained to program me. We spent a couple days talking, mainly one full day talking, and then days after just, talking from time to time. And I gave it up, but there was still something inside of me searching. Well, I thought, well, I'll join the Navy. And all during this time, while I was down in Florida, there was some time that I had gotten into alcohol. Had never tried the drugs at that point, but I was into the alcohol. And I joined the Navy thinking, well, I'll whip myself into shape, and got in there and found out that all those guys were just like my dad, and all I was doing was surrounding myself with more people like my father. Somehow got out with an honorable discharge after 26 days. I acted crazy and did stupid things and got out. I feel bad that I didn't serve my country, but I wasn't ready at that point. I was still, had been 17 when I joined, and from there I had come back and met Connie. I worked at a Clark's Discount Store. She worked there, and we just got to know each other, and we got married, and there was still, and we got married in a Pentecostal church. She was Catholic, and at that time I was attending a Pentecostal church. I was jumping from church to church to church, and just never really knowing Christ. And she just went along with it, and at that point I started drinking. Then we had Tammy, my daughter, and fatherhood. Oh man, I just wasn't ready to be a dad. I mean, I love my daughter dearly, and just reached a point where, wow, I'm a father, and that was pretty scary. And Connie, she was always there for Tammy, and she went through a lot with my drinking and so on. I left her, took off to just joined a rock band in Olean and worked sound and lights, and was road manager for them. Took off across the country drinking and drugging. I just got really crazy, and I guess I was living that childhood that I don't even know if it was a childhood. I just found something, the drugs and the alcohol, and I ended up in California, and the people that I went down there with, they took off different ways, and here I was stranded. Well, I called good old mom and dad. They sent me the money to get me back as long as I pay them back. I came back and got back with Connie, and then there was a time where they had a weekend. Well, while I was in California, I should tell you this, there was a Hare Krishna weekend, and I went to that, and it was where it was a feast, and they told about the Hare Krishna faith, and I just couldn't see me shaving my head and going that route, so I just, came back. Fortunately, I didn't join them. I came back, and then Connie and I, after we were there, I'm searching, and I'm going to church, and I'm not going to church, and going to church, and drinking, and, just all mixed up and confused, always searching. Then I heard of the Moonies out in Philadelphia, Sun Myung Moon from Korea. They had a full weekend out in Philadelphia, and my wife and I went out there. And actually, it was at that point, before we had my daughter, Connie was pregnant for Tammy. And we went in, and they kind of blocked us in with buses and everybody, and they separated the men and the women, and they just really tried, I'll just say, dumping their mojo on us to get us to join. And I was starting to fall for it. Thank God Connie wasn't. Somehow at breakfast the next day, Connie and I got together and decided, hey, this isn't cool. And found out later that they would have taken Tammy and raised them as a Moonie, and we would have never seen her again. And we would have been separated into men and women's groups, and it was just a really crazy group, and I believe God's hand was on that as well as the other times. And we come back, we snuck out is what we did. We told them they had to move the bus because Connie had to go get something, or I don't even remember what it was. We got the car out of there, and we both met and took off. And we got back home, and it was at that point I decided, I'm just going to straighten out and try and work and be a father. And I was off and on, in and out of jobs, couldn't keep a job. And then as time went on, I did finally, I'll jump up to, I believe it was 97 when I had Stand in the Gap. I had gone out to Stand in the Gap through Promise Keepers, and there was a group of men with one focus, and that was to find God. And I was so far away from him, and so searching so hard to find him that I just got around. I left the group that I went out there with. I left from the group of the church that I was with, and just got to know some other guys. Got in with some gang types, just group, people that had lost everything, and really I had lost everything. Back when I preached, that's when God had told me, this is what I want you to do, is be an evangelist. And now here I am, and several years later, wasted all that time, and I was before God, and they said, get the pictures of your family out and look at them, and we did, and they said, now, these are the people you've hurt. And that was a moment of healing. That was a moment of healing for me, because I just cried out to God, and I gave him everything. I gave him the alcohol. I gave him just everything, my family. And I called my wife on the way back, and I says, throw out the beer, get rid of all the alcohol. I don't want any around. And she's like, yeah, right, here we go again. But it was at that point that God delivered me from the alcohol. And yeah, I drank now and then, since then, but I didn't drink alcoholically, and I don't even have a desire for it. Even after I drink a couple, it's just yucky, and so I thank God I was delivered from alcohol. That's when I first found I was on the way with a relationship to Christ, and I really found Christ then. But I still had a lot of growing to do. I was still all about me. I've always been a very selfish person. I was the oldest, and I was always selfish. And as I went on to back to church, I was on fire. I taught this evangelism course and everything. Had to fight with a Sunday school teacher in a way, not fight with her, but she was mad because I was taken away from her class, and it just seemed like a competition at the church I had been in, and it kind of hurt me, but I didn't let it. Well, I probably did let it fester because there's probably some things I need to repent of there, and there were some hurts. And another time I suggested bus ministry, and someone said, well, we don't want to have that kind in our church. And that really bothered me too, because aren't we there to reach the young people? Aren't we there to bring any kind in? And it was at that point I just kind of fell away again. I just said, I'm tired of fighting this. And my daughter had gone off to Bible college, and some things had happened out there that didn't sit too well with me. And she had a rough time at college, and I blamed it on God, and it wasn't God. It was just decisions that were made and so on. And so I come back, and her and I had I came back. Connie started coming to Open Arms, and back about 4.5 years ago, when Pastor Andy was here, and she just kept going, and she said, "You got to try this church." And my neighbors, they started going, and Becky and Dennis, and I was like, "Wow." I started to see a change come over my wife, which I had prayed for years. And my neighbors, and it was something great. So I started coming to the church, and around me. Pastor Mike was awesome. He was just on fire for the Lord. It wasn't a pretentious crowd. You didn't have people sitting here looking at you, judging you for what you wore, or what you didn't wear, or what people, I noticed the children were running freely, and people were, oh, those children should be sitting and behaving. They should be dressed up. They should be in suits. You'd never heard that. And just you saw all the awesomeness of God's love, because he said, we are to care for the little children, and it just, there is a love for the little children here, and there's the love of Christ is here at Open Arms, and I really found my home. I haven't. I got off the drugs a while back. I mean, long time ago, and the alcohol, and the drugs were like in the 60s, 70s, early 80 era. But after that, it was pretty much alcohol, and I was delivered from that, and Promise Keepers, and so I just have things to deal with right now. I'm dealing with fulfilling my call to evangelism. I'm to the point where I want to do God's work. I have a strong feeling that we're close to the end times, and I see it in the news every day. I see it in Revelations if you read it, and I don't want to waste any more time. I want to get out there, and I want to fulfill my call. I want to see people brought to the love of Christ, and I don't want to see us forget the children anymore. And this church is all about the children. This church is all about the young people, and that's where I'm at, and that's where I want to be. Maybe not working with young people, but waking some of those dead people who forgot their first love, Jesus Christ, like I did, and they need to get back to their first love and find God's real love in a church that offers God's true love. And that's where I'm at. Open Arms is the church for me. Open Arms is the future of ministry, and I thank God for bringing my wife here. She's saved. She's ready to be baptized. I'm on fire for Christ, and I never thought I'd see this day, and I thank God for it.